It's the Brilliant Black Men Show.
Welcome to the Brilliant Black Man Show, shining brilliance all around the world. Join us now as we share the success stories of brilliant black men who are making a difference in our world.
With your host, Melissa Johnson and Brian Bailey.
Well, Brian, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
This is our second episode.
Of what?
The Brilliant Black
The
Man
Brilliant
Show.
Black Man Show.
Oh my, we're shining brilliance all around the world.
Oh my
Our
goodness.
next guest is
Emmett Burns.
Emmett Burns,
Yeah.
and we would like to welcome him to the show.
I am so glad to have him on the show today.
I am.
He's here.
He's here.
Let's go
do
welcome
it.
him. Come on.
Mr. Emmett Burns,
Oh,
welcome
man.
to the show.
He's here. Let's go.
Let's
How
go.
you doing?
Yeah.
Let's
What's
go.
up, man? All right.
Man, we are finally here.
Finally.
We are here. I am Melissa Johnson, the host of the Brilliant Black Man Show, and my co-host, Brian Bailey. How you doing, Brian?
I'm doing great.
I am going to let you introduce our next guest.
Well, you know, it's an honor and a privilege, and we talked about this for a while, bringing you
Long
on this
time.
show, right? You're doing
Yes,
some
we have.
great things in the community.
Thank you.
You have a wonderful program that I want all you guys to hear about today, so if you could take notes, do that. Get your pen and paper, 'cause this is going to be great. You know, one of the things that I like to talk about when our guests come on, we want to talk about those early lifehood experiences that
Okay.
kind of made you the person or shaped you into who you are. So can you kind of warm us up with that?
Sure. I would say that my father being in civil rights
Okay.
had a lot to do with shaping who I am right now. I'm sure you all have heard of Medgar Evers.
Yes.
So after Medgar Evers was assassinated, my father took over his position as field director in Mississippi.
Okay.
So we moved to Mississippi, and he was a field director. So he was doing the civil rights work. And I think it was the servitude that he did that kind of ingrained in us that, hey, you know, it's really important to not only help our race, but help our community and just be like a servant, not only for the Lord, because he was a pastor as well,
Wow.
but just for humanity and mankind. So just watching him go throughout his day and go throughout his business with the NAACP,
Yeah.
it just cemented that mind frame of servitude and how important that is
Wow.
for us. Yes.
Wow. Now, I know you, of course, for we grew up pretty much in the same area. Now, I know you grew up with 3 brothers,
Yes.
and I know it wasn't easy, but did they kind of mold you in a way as well?
I think what it was I had to be that leader, or I had to be that role model.
Okay.
So they kind of watched everything that I did. So I had to walk a certain way, I had to carry myself in a certain way.
Right.
And it was interesting because during that time, my father because we moved from Mississippi to Baltimore in 1979. He got a promotion
Okay.
from field director to regional director.
Okay.
So when we moved up here, he was doing a lot of civil rights work. And he was on television every week.
Okay.
Wow.
So he was on television every week, and so he has a unique name, and Reverend Dr. Emmett Burns. My name is Emmett Burns. So let's just say I couldn't get into any trouble. I couldn't do anything
Right.
because anytime I tried to do something, I'd be like, wait a minute, what's your name again? And I'm like, oh, Lord, here we go. Yes, I'm Emmett Burns. So I think a lot of that kept me within the realm of being more of a role model for my brothers. So, yeah.
And then you went off to, after high school, you went off to college, right?
Went to Temple University,
Okay.
so had a 4-year football scholarship. Temple University, actually, it's 2 degrees of separation. My head coach, Bruce Arians, was the head coach of Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
The current head coach for Tampa Bay was my teammate, Todd Bowles.
Okay.
So a lot of the coaches that was on the team at that time are currently coaching in the NFL, and a lot of them are coaching for Tampa Bay.
Wow.
So, but long story short, yeah. So I went to Temple, and it was kind of interesting. And I think the little feather that I put in my cap from that, it was out of 64 freshmen that went into Temple that first year, only 3 of us graduated on time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, only 3 of us came out in 4 years. So that was, I like to kind of have that feather in the cap and just kind of roll with that. And the most important time or that turning point in my collegiate career that I knew that there was more to life than football. It was doing football practice, and I'm in my position, and I'm running to hit the quarterback, and this fullback stepped up and he hit me hard. And I saw myself flipping in the air and flipping in the air. And when I landed on the AstroTurf, I looked up and said, there's more to life than football.
Okay. Okay.
So that's when I was like, yeah, I think I need to take my studies seriously. So, but yeah, I majored in political science.
Okay.
And graduated in 4 years. So I was pretty happy about that.
So you're starting to be molded now into the person you are, right? I mean, your dad with his community service, right? And so at what point did you start thinking, Emmett, that maybe community service may be something that I want to do as well? Did that happen in college? Where did you start going down that road?
So, major in political science, I mentioned that. So when I graduated from college, I wanted to be a lawyer.
Okay.
So I was going to be a lawyer. I was like, yes, I'm going to be a lawyer. So then I went and took the LSAT.
Okay.
And then I got my grades back from the LSAT. And I looked at the grades and I was like, there's much more to life than being a lawyer.
Okay.
So these scores right here ain't gonna get me into law school. So like, I need a
Real
plan
talk.
B quickly.
Okay.
So worked for the government for a little while, but I always had a yearning to work with kids.
Right.
So that's what got me into teaching. I started at a small alternative school, Campfield, small
Campfield.
alternative school, and that's when I started my teaching career.
Okay.
So yeah, that's when I started my teaching career.
Okay, so we're going to get into that a little bit as we move on with the show about your teaching career, because that started to mold you.
And it really did. It really did. That experience, it was trial by fire.
Yes.
But the excitement of working with kids, that really sparked that flame inside of me to continue to do that.
And the big thing with that is not just community service, but you had a heart of service. You really wanted to help people, bring them up, right? Show them that there's a better way of doing things. And you, because I caught this, I didn't take notes down, but because your dad, number one, was a minister as well.
Correct.
You really couldn't do anything. You got kind of, right?
So
what do they call that? Remind me. Hold it. That's PK?
PK.
Preacher's kid?
Preacher's
right?
kid.
Yep, I was the PK.
You was a good PK.
I was a good PK.
Okay, because I heard that some PKs is not always good.
Yeah, now I can't vouch for the other 2 cats. I call themselves my brother.
Right,
I
okay.
can't vouch for them.
Okay.
But I can vouch for me. So
Okay.
for myself, yeah, I was the good one. I was the role model.
Okay.
So if my mother was sitting over there in the chair, she would probably be like, yeah,
Amen.
that's my baby. He was a good one. So
Amen. Okay.
that would be her cry from the audience. Yes, it would.
Let's write that down. Emmett was the good one. Right here. Let me see if
Well,
I
you
got my
carried your
pen.
father's name, so you had to be,
I
right?
carried, yeah, and it was a huge responsibility. It really, really was. And the other funny thing about it is, when I introduced myself, I would just give people my first name, because I know if I throw in the last name, I'm going down that rabbit hole. Like, Emmett, what's your last name? Burns. What was your father? And here we go down the rabbit hole. Yes, that was my father. So yeah, but it's all good, and it helped mold me to be the person that I am today.
So walking through your path, at some point you said, I think I want to be an educator. Was that childhood education? Was that high school? At what level did you initially want to go at with that?
I think after I left the government printing office, I told you I was in the federal government, and it was at that time I really wanted to work with kids. Actually, I had 2 choices. I either wanted to get into the FBI or be a school teacher.
Okay.
So just like the LSAT thing, the FBI thing ain't work out.
Okay.
So by
C.
default, in a good way, it led me down that path to education.
Yes.
So yeah, it was like I said, it was just the beginning of a wonderful, wonderful career.
Yeah. So you chose education as your career of choice.
Chose education as my career of choice. So I went from Canfield, it was alternative middle school, and then I went over to Woodlawn.
Okay.
So we went to Woodlawn,
Yes.
and it was kind of cool. You're actually teaching at your alma mater.
Wow.
So I did that, and I coached football.
Oh.
And and that was really, really rewarding,
Okay.
just working with the kids. And I think one of the biggest satisfactions I get from that is even today, I have students that I had in my class to come up to me, and actually my wife can attest to this. We were out to dinner, and we were leaving, we were coming out the parking lot. Guy comes up to me, like, yo, Mr. Burns, you just don't know what an influence you were in my life when you taught at Woodlawn.
Yes.
So it's like I get that a lot. And because during that time teaching, I'm like, okay, you're getting on my nerves, you're getting on my nerves, you're getting on my nerves,
Yeah.
but I'm hanging there with you
Yes.
because I know eventually you're going to turn it around.
Wow.
And a lot of those kids did. But I spent from 93 to 97 teaching at Woodlawn
Okay.
and coaching football.
Okay.
So, and actually my JV quarterback went on to play pro football. Vincent Fuller,
Okay.
he went to play pro football. And we had Keon Carpenter.
I remember Keon.
Yeah, we had Keon Carpenter. He was on varsity when I coached JV, and he went on to play professional
Okay.
football. So it was. So I think we did a lot to impact those people
Yes.
of Woodlawn.
Yeah, so two different sides, as an educator in the classroom and also on the football field.
Yeah, it was, and it's as cliche as it sounds. Coaching was pretty much the next best thing to playing football.
Yes.
So it was.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the disciplines that I used in the classroom, like you said, they just kind of transfer
Yes, exactly.
over to the football
Yeah,
field.
exactly. That's where I was going. Now here's the $1 million question. Who else in your family was an educator? Is it just something that you saw maybe a grandmother do, or was your mom an educator? How did you?
So my grandmother worked for Head Start.
Okay.
Back in the early
Yeah,
70s.
yeah, I remember Head Start.
Yes, I remember her waking up when we were in Mississippi, and so she would go to work with the little people at Head Start.
Okay.
So she was an educator.
Okay.
My father taught seminary school, St. Mary's in Baltimore.
Okay, yep.
And he also, when he was working on his PhD at the University of Pittsburgh,
Right.
go Steelers.
Okay.
When he was when he was working on his PhD, he also taught a class there. So he also was an educator. My uncle, my father's brother, was an athletic director at Fayetteville State.
Okay.
So it was a lot of educators, and I think all of my aunts on my mother's side were educators,
Right.
as long as my cousins. So it was just in the blood, I guess.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about education, guys. We know that you always hear that the teachers, they don't get their due, right? They do their respect. They don't, they're not paid enough. There's some things out there where they're doing all the work to get our kids to that next level.
Right.
Do you see some of that where you guys are getting frustrated, things is going on? I mean, how is the current economy maybe affecting teachers?
You know what? It's one of those things where sometimes you can't see the forest through the trees.
Okay.
And it's like when you're in the thick of it, you don't see the flowers or the seeds that you're planting for the future. You can't see that. Only thing you see is this little thing in the dirt getting on your nerves.
Yes.
That's all you see.
Right.
But you still have to nurture it. You still have to care for it. So it is frustrating. It is worrisome. But when you have a kid that wants to come back to your class and stay for like 40 additional minutes because he's so fascinated with World War II, and you just giving him that time, just the look in their faces is rewarding enough. It really was. So a lot of the intangible things that teachers get are the things that are rewarding for us. It's not the paychecks, but it's knowing that we're cultivating and we're growing, tomorrow's future, man.
And that was bringing up my next question. I think you probably answered 75% of it. What keeps you motivated, man? I mean, what keeps you going as a teacher, right?
I would say it was that. It was just really working with the kids. I just have a natural knack working with the kids, because after I left Woodlawn, I went to, after I left Woodlawn, I went to pharmaceutical sales.
Okay.
So I kind of took a break from teaching. So I did pharmaceutical sales for 12 years.
Huh.
Yeah, did that for 12 years. Then got laid off twice. Got laid off, and then I went into IT. Did that for a little while. Started my own personal training business. I did that. And then I went back into teaching. I went to Reisterstown Middle School. Okay. Yeah, and the way I got back into teaching over there was I started a mentor program. Okay. Because I was working with the kids. Kids like, hey, we want to get ready for football season next year. So I started working with them, and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to come check on your grades. Right. And they was like, okay, so I will come check on them in between my clients. That turned into, can you come work here? And I put together a program, a mentor program. So they gave me 15 at-risk kids, and what I did during the day was I would just follow them around and make sure that they were doing what they were supposed to be doing. So that's how I kind of got back into teaching for that first year. The second year, they were like, you're gonna have to teach a class. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. You know, world history is right up my alley. I could teach history, middle school, let's do this. And the principal was like, no, we need you to teach science. And I'm looking behind me like, who are you talking to? Because I know you're not talking to me. So long story short, I taught 7th grade science. Yeah, but then it got even crazier, because the teacher that was teaching physics in 8th grade quit. And they needed a physics teacher.
So you had to do that as well.
So they were like, yeah, Mr. Burns, you're doing a great job teaching this science class, so we need you to teach physics. I'm like, I can't even spell physics. How are you going to have me teach?
It's with a P, right?
Well, I thought it was the F, but then so they got me squared away. So it was crazy. So I was like, okay, I'll do it. And so on my break time, I'm learning physics. And then I'm turning around next period and I'm teaching it. So but it worked. So I did that. And then from there I went to Pikesville.
Not too far from Reisterstown.
So I went to Pikesville. So, you know, so I just kind of stayed in that education realm. So I went to Pikesville, and I was it was more like a teacher assistant type scenario. And actually I started the 100 Black Men Club at Pikesville.
Really?
Yeah, I started 100 Black Men Club over at Pikesville. I think it's still going on today. So I started that club over there, and it was kind of interesting because I was kind of used as a resource. So teachers would teach on something, whether it be history, English. Like one of the English teachers had a project for their students, and it was like, okay, pick a person that's not Martin Luther King, and do a report on them. So she modeled the story. So she did Medgar Evers. So she went and she did a project to model how she wanted it done, and she went through the whole thing with Medgar Evers and everything. And I'm sitting there like, wow, okay, so the person she's talking about is the person that my father used to deliver papers to when he was in Mississippi, because my father was Medgar Evers' paperboy. So after she finished, I'm telling them, I was like, yeah, I want to add a little bit more to the story. So I added that part to it. Everybody was like, wow, you old. I'm like, well, thank you.
Did they say that?
I appreciate they did. I'm like, well, thank you. So I worked at Pikesville. I did that for a year, and it was a wonderful experience. Then after Pikesville, I went into Baltimore City.
You don't have to say more. I can kind of only imagine what that transition was like.
At the corner of Dukeland.
Yeah, I was there.
Yeah.
I know what Dukeland is.
Yeah, so It was, and that was interesting.
Oh, yeah.
That was interesting. So that experience was not a good experience.
Okay.
It wasn't a good experience. But this happened during COVID. So right when COVID hit, then we started going virtual.
Okay.
But even before that time, I really wasn't getting along with the principal.
Right.
Principal wasn't crazy about me.
Right.
So what happened then was the principal called me up, and it was like, we're going to let you go. And I'm like, okay, that's fine, because I don't like you. I know you don't like me, and that's all fine and good. So that's good. So I left. I left Baltimore City, and then that's how I got in. That's how I got into starting Clara Ruth Homeschool.
And that's what we're going to talk
that
about in
was
the
open
second
door.
segment.
Exactly,
Open
right.
the
Open door for
Yeah.
you.
Open door. You know what I got out of this? Let me tell you, and this is how my brain works. So you had some inspiration to become an educator, right? But you also had a heart of service, and it all started coming together.
It came together. It really did.
It came together.
Yeah.
And now you're transitioning that to bigger things.
Bigger.
Exactly.
Right? But this is what I get, and this is probably a message to all the teachers out there. From talking to you today, I see that if you're going to be a teacher, you just can't sit in that one box and say, okay, I'm going to teach English, I'm going to teach math. You got to be creative. You got to bring other things to help the kids get what you're trying to teach them. You got to relate to the kids. You got to know, what maybe, their personalities are. And you sound like you did some of those things, moving around to learn more about maybe the psyche of the kid or psyche of our youth.
Yeah, and you had to, and I'm glad you said you had to relate to them, because when I taught world history, people think history is boring, is this, is that. So what I did was I would set up a question of the day for my kids at Woodlawn. And the question of the day, it would be a relevant question. So we would talk about, let's say, we'll talk about the burial rituals of India.
Okay.
So in India, if the husband dies in a rural village, his body was burned. It was expected of his wife to jump on top of the fire and be burned with them to show her everlasting love for her husband. It was called the practice of suti. So that was the practice. So one of my questions of the day would be, would you die for your boyfriend or would you die for your girlfriend? Wow. And the kids would take that question and then they would run with it. I'm not dying for Talika because Talika was out with Malika last week and I don't care. And so, but it would lead us, it would build it up into the discussion that we need to have about India. I did one with religion. So one of the ancient pharaohs would have the servants buried alive in the pyramids because they know that when they come out from the afterlife, they're going to need some sort of servitude to help them in the afterlife. So you have the servants walking in, you have the horses and everything, the chariots, and they would seal the sarcophagus and they would be buried in there. Because they know that they were going to be, in the afterworld. 3,000 years later, they open everything up, and they find a whole bunch of servants like, what happened? But the question I led with that was, would you die for your religion? And that led into why the servants were so fervently believed into sacrificing themselves going to the pyramid. So I would say that you really have to make lessons, no matter what the subject matter, you have to make it relevant. And you have to really make it interesting. And actually, I know we're going to talk about this in the second half, but that was one of the main focuses and drives that I wanted to use for the Clara Ruth Homeschool, was to make the lessons practical and relevant for them. So yeah, you have to, because if not, you're going to lose your students.
Yes, you are.
And they love, so they would come in the classroom, they would peek behind I would pull the blind down or the projector down, the screen, and they would peek behind there. It was like, "What's the question for the day, Mr. Burns?" I was like, "You will find out. Go sit around."
Yeah.
So, but you
Yeah.
know, but they were engaged in that, so it made it made it fun.
Fun and
It made it
interesting,
fun for
yes.
us. Yeah.
I think about you being a community man. How exactly did you leave that area of education and then merge into the community world?
Good question.
For what I'm doing now with Claire Ruth, they kind of they merged together. They merged together. So that aspect of it was something I wanted to build into the practical side of education. So I built that into it.
I'm gonna stop you for a second.
Go.
Let's introduce your company first, and let's talk a little bit about it on this side, and then we'll come back on the other
Okay,
side.
all
So
right.
introduce your company to us, please.
So my company is called Claire Ruth Homeschool. And basically what we do is we homeschool those kids whose parents really don't have the time to work with them or really don't have the tools to really help them get through a homeschool curriculum. So what we do is we work with those kids and put them through the homeschool curriculum for the parents while the parents go to work. But on the flip side about it, we still highly encourage the parents to volunteer and be part of what we're doing as well to help out. So that's the basics of Claire Ruth Homeschool.
Okay, so before I ask my next question, Clara comes from
Clara comes from my father's mother.
And then Ruth comes from
My mother's mother.
And we put them together.
And we put them together.
And we get Clara Ruth.
And we get
both sides of the right.
We get both sides.
Both
so,
sides.
Yeah, we get both sides.
So the parents that are in, the students that are in your program come from parents who have elected to take their kids out of the traditional school setting. So they elect not to go to public, not to go to private, not to go to charter. They want to educate their kids. However, these particular parents are not able to be at home all day to educate their children. So they elect to come to your institute to provide that education for their children. Is that correct?
Correct. And actually that's how I got started, because after I was laid off from Baltimore City, a friend of mine called me and said that I'm currently homeschooling my daughter, but I have to go back to work. Do you know anybody that'd be willing to work with my daughter while I'm at work? And I'm like, yeah, me, hello. So and literally that's how it started.
Wow.
That's how it started.
And you said it started during COVID.
It started during
around
COVID.
2020, around 2020. And we know in the regular school system, everything switched from in class to online. And so was your program also created as an online learning center?
We started yes, we did. We started
Virtual.
we started virtually.
Okay.
So we did that because we couldn't have the contact, but the great thing about it was one-on-one. So it was virtual. I used the platform that I currently use now for the homeschool, and that platform was really interactive. Because one of the things I found, because when we switched to virtual, when I talked for Baltimore City, kids were tuning out. They were laying in the bed. They weren't watching. They weren't paying attention. You hear the mother in the background screaming at it. There was no engagement for that. So it's like I took the lessons for what wasn't working when we had to go virtual for the second half of the school year in Baltimore City, and I just and I put a spin on it to make it more interactive. So for that first year, it was interactive with the student. The way that I got my second student was really interesting, because another parent heard about the success I was having with this particular student, and she unenrolled her child from Prince George's County Schools, and set up an arrangement for him to stay in with friends in Baltimore County, and enrolled him into my program. So now I had 2 students, and the interesting thing about him, I would say he's probably one of my better success stories. He was 6th grade reading on the 3rd grade level.
And we're going to hold that thought
Okay.
to after the break.
Okay.
And we're going to be right back with the Brilliant Black Man Show. And welcome back to the Brilliant Black Man Show with our guest, Emmett Burns. So, Mr. Burns, on the other side of the break, we were talking about the second young man who joined your program. So, what impact did you have in his life?
So he was a 6th grader reading on a 2nd to 3rd grade level. And one of the reasons why his mother pulled him out of the school was because virtual learning was not working for the second half of the school year for where he currently was. And he just needed to have work presented to him in a different way. So I think the impact that we made on him was just working on him one-on-one and just helping him matriculate through the lessons and get through what he had to get through. One of the great things about homeschool is that you're not on a time schedule, you're not on a time frame. So I work with him personally, so we would stay on one subject until he mastered that subject before we moved on to the next subject. So he stayed with me for a year and a half, and then his parents moved to Waldorf, Maryland, and so he transferred to a school there. But that the second quarter that he was in that school, he made the honor roll.
Wow.
And he made the honor roll from that point on. So to have this young man, 6th grade, we're on the 2nd grade level, to making an honor roll in his brand new school, new surrounding, it was just a wonderful achievement. It really, really was.
Wow, and you've worked in both fields. So you've worked in the educational system, and you've also worked in homeschool system.
Correct.
What is the difference, and why was he successful in your program versus the public school setting?
I'm going to give you an example of the last school that I worked with in Baltimore City. In my 7th grade class, I had a couple of students that I could take from that class and put them in any private school in Baltimore, in the metropolitan Baltimore, and they would have shined. They would have done really, really well amongst the best of the best of the best. These young ladies were that bright. On the other end of the pendulum, I had a young man in my class, 15 in the 7th grade, and this was his 2nd year in organized school. So it's like trying to balance keeping them engaged and trying to help this young man keep up. It's a juggling act, and unfortunately, something's going to fall between the cracks. So I was able to, I'm trying to help him on the best of my abilities on both ends. The great thing about this program and helping this young man, it was just he and I. And we just sat there, and we were able to take our time and really go through the lessons that we had to go through in order for him to grasp the information that he needed to grasp. So I think the biggest success for that particular model is just having that attention and really gearing that curriculum towards your individual student. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons. Not only city schools, but public schools really they don't have the
Manpower.
luxury to do that. They just don't have that luxury.
Right. So homeschool, is this an option for all parents? homeschooling? Is this an option for all parents or certain parents?
It's an option for all parents. It's an option for all parents. A lot of parents are opting for it because a lot of kids are being bullied in school. In fact, the last student that we had in that program was ninth grade, and he was being bullied. When he came for the intake meeting, the kid had a black eye. He had just been jumped a couple of days ago from his high school. So they took him out because of that aspect. So it's a number of reasons why they unenrolled him from public schools. You know, for bullying, not really keeping up, losing interest in school.
Right.
It's a myriad of reasons.
Yeah, because young boys learn different from young girls. And a lot of the classrooms are being taught by women. And women teach the young men the same way they teach the young girls, and boys learn different. And a lot of times it's hard for a young man to sit and watch, you know, the teacher lecture for a couple of hours. You know, they're so energetic. I want to go back to your other point as it relates to bullying.
Okay.
Now, my son was in private school.
Okay.
And we left Detroit and moved to Charlotte, and we put him in another private school here in Charlotte. And when he got to this private school in Charlotte, because of the stance that he took, they bullied him in his classroom. Now, mind you, he was in private school, and we were paying a lot of money for him to go to this private school. And it was confined to the classroom, and that classroom was very toxic. And all of the resources that we put in our child, they were gone almost overnight because of this toxic class. So we had to take him out of the private school sector and take him and put him in the homeschool, but I had to homeschool him myself. However, what you're saying today is that if parents are having problems with their children learning, or they're having problems with bullying, or whatever reason, they may not be excelling in the big class size. They may need that one-on-one attention, and parents thinking, because in my mind I was thinking as well, if I homeschool, now that responsibility is on me to homeschool my child, but I'm working, how can I homeschool my child? This is an alternative where they can enroll in a program where you don't have to, you have to support your child, but you don't have to be the main educator in the home. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is correct. And it falls under a program called the umbrella program. So any kid that's being homeschooled has to fall under a homeschool program, which is called an umbrella program.
Okay.
So we are an umbrella program. So, and again, you know, it gives us that flexibility to work with those kids. So I have kids that will come to us, and we will work with those kids. And you know, we would work with them, educate them, things of that sort. I also have parents who still want to work with their kids and do the homeschooling themselves, but they just need additional resources
right.
that they may not necessarily have. So they come to me as well, and I work with them too. The other thing is, if you're homeschooling your kid and you want to do it yourself, you have to be under someone's umbrella. So for the parents who are doing the homeschooling themselves, they have to report to me like maybe once a quarter, and then they just kind of show me the portfolio. We kind of go over what they've done at home. I give them suggestions, things like that. So that way I could keep them on track of what they need to do. So the program is kind of twofold. So the ones that are actually here that we work with, and the parents that do it themselves.
And you just support.
But I'm their support, and I also kind of monitor them to make sure that they are doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Now, do they follow the curriculum that is in the school system, or do they have their own curriculum for homeschooling?
The thing about homeschool is there's no official curriculum. You can pretty much do whatever it is that you want to do. And that's the beauty of it. And that's the curse of it. Because if you have a parent who's limited in their educational capacities, they can only do but so much for the kids. So they may be doing the kids a disservice. Whereas if you have a kid that can't sit in the classroom for 45 minutes and they need other types of activities to keep them engaged, homeschools allow them to be able to incorporate different activities that will keep them tuned in, as well as taking care of what they need to take care of. It's fun. When I was a teacher, I had 2 kids that were homeschooled, and they came out of the homeschool scenario and placed in my classroom, and they stood out like you would not believe, because they finished their work like this, and they're looking at me like, okay, what's next? And the other kids are working and struggling, whatever, and they would just get through things. They would just finish work like this.
Yeah, I've noticed that as well. I'm an educator, and a lot of the students that come into my classroom, I teach career development at the college, and they're very bright and they're very disciplined. And the first thing I ask them is, what high school did you go to? And most of the children will say, I was homeschooled. I mean, very, very disciplined. And most of them are, if you test them, they're beyond the level that they're in. They're way beyond that level, way beyond. And they're like, well, we don't get graded. We're not in a certain grade. We just work on our, on our pace. But they're so disciplined, so disciplined.
The curriculum that we use, I would say, is here. The curriculum that's approved by the state of Maryland is not as advanced as what we use. It's like the state of Maryland is trying to get their curriculum here, but it's not quite there yet. So a question that a kid may get in the public school is, why did George Washington cross the Delaware River? That's it. A question they may get in homeschool from the curriculum that I teach is, what was the motivating factors behind him crossing the river, and what obstacles did he face as he was crossing it, and how did that play into the outcome of the war?
That's good.
That's homeschool.
That's good.
Public school, why did he cross the river?
That's it.
So the thing about it is working with kids on and getting them to think on a higher level is really critical. And if you're working with them one-on-one, no matter where they are from a mental capacity, eventually they're going to get it, and they're going to retrain their thinking to get to that point.
Let me ask you something. In your program, because I know with when I was homeschooling my child, there was subject matters that I didn't feel equipped to teach him. And so we went to a co-op, and then I believe there was tutoring available. Is that built into your system as well?
That could be built into my system, because like I said, for those parents who want to do it themselves, if there are areas that they're not really comfortable with, then they could come to us for that additional help. So yeah, that part is built in.
Now let me ask you this: what was the outcome from that little young man that you took he was in what grade? The 6th grade?
He was in the 6th grade, and
do you still follow him?
I haven't kept up with him for the past year, but the last time I checked in with him, he was still right on cue, on the roll student, and still doing very, very well.
Is he in high school now or college?
He's in high school.
He's in high school.
Yeah. The other 2 students that I had, the first young lady that I started out with, she got into a college preparatory high school in Baltimore, so she'll graduate this year with an associate's degree and a high school diploma.
Wow.
The second girl was she just had problems in her middle school, so her parents unenrolled her from her middle school, and she spent 8th grade with me, and she went to a magnet program.
Wow.
And she should be coming out this year, and she's doing really, really well in that magnet program.
Wow, that is awesome. So let's talk a little bit about your motto. Your motto: if I can help someone along the way, then my living will not be in vain. I see throughout your work that you are rooted and grounded in helping others. Please explain why helping people is so important to you.
I think it kind of goes back to the way I was raised. Again, my father was a minister and he was in civil rights. So for those people who really didn't have a voice or really couldn't represent themselves, he was that voice. He was that representative, and he was able to help them out. And seeing that day after day after day after day, you kind of understand the importance of why it is to help somebody. I currently work for a nonprofit now, and in career development. It's funny that you would say that. I'm kind of in the career development field too. So, you know, just to be able to help people find jobs, help them with their resumes, and just help them learn how, with their interview skills. I had a special needs client yesterday, quick story, special needs client that came in yesterday. She was interviewing for Chipotle. So she came in and we went over her interview questions, and we went over there. She went to the interview and she did really well. So she'll find out Wednesday if she has the job. But to have her thank me and say, I could not have done this without you, it's just wonderful. I tell people, now I go into work at 8:30. I put my little Superman cape on. I do my little due diligence, and 4:30 I take my Superman cape off. But when I lay my head on the pillow, it's all worth it because I got a good, sound mind and conscious knowing that I did what I was put on this earth to do. Yes.
That is so amazing. So it leads me into my next question. If you believe you are successful, and I have my own definition of personal success, and I like how you ended that last statement, because when I go to bed at night and rest my head on the pillow, I know that I have done what I was created to do. Is that success for you?
That's success. It really is. And the other thing is, when it comes effortlessly to you, but you're still making an impact. So, you know, it's like for my job now, it's interesting. I was acknowledged by the COO of the entire corporation about an amazing job that I've been doing. And I'm thinking to myself, I've been here for 7 months. I haven't really been working. I've just been myself. But the impact that I'm making it's huge. But this isn't hard for me. It just comes naturally, and it just flows. So it's not really hard, but it's impactful, and it's really gratifying.
Wow. So your legacy. When we think about legacy, what is legacy important to you? And if so, what is the legacy that you would like to leave? And I tell you, I'm going to let you answer that question, but I want you to know this. I admire you not only for your community work, but I admire the type of man that you are. And I admire the way that you honor your wife. And I don't know if if people will tell you that, but to be a black man and to honor the beauty that she is. You have a very beautiful wife. Her name is Vanessa Burns, and she's here with you today. She's very beautiful, and I love how you honor and you respect her and you allow her to be all that God has created her to be. I think that's another component of success, when you're comfortable in your own skin and then you allow your wife to be all that God has designed her to be. That's success. So you're not just successful out in public, you're also successful privately. Would you agree, yes or no?
100% agree with it. And I'm not just saying that because she's sitting over there with a skillet, and if I answer that wrong, she's going to hit me. But no, I 100% agree with that. You know, this is my third marriage. This was her third marriage, and it was kind of like the third time's a charm. So, and the thing about it is we work so wonderfully, synergistically. together that it just flows. I'm her biggest cheerleader. She has her own platform that she does. She's my biggest cheerleader. You know, when I told her about my acknowledgement, she was the first one with the big emojis bouncing all over everywhere on the screen, saying thank you, whatever. So, you know, we're just each other's cheerleader. But to have that type of support behind you, or that foundation behind you, it definitely helps you to be the type of person that you are, you know, because I could be Superman, but I still need that Lois Lane to support me and to help me and to encourage me at the end of the day. And we do that. We really work. We really work on. I tease her and I joke her and I make fun of her, but I think she knows I love her.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
So we're getting a lot of good information. I'm taking a lot of mental notes. But one thing I want to leave our audience with is, at least, if you can give these to me, this would be perfect, 3 takeaways for them for all the things that we talked about. What are the top 3 things you want them to walk away with today?
Top 3 things I would say is, don't put yourself in a tunnel when it comes to education. Okay. Look at all of your options. Look at all of your options. If your child is not succeeding, they don't have to stay in the realm of where they are. Look at other options. You know, whether it's my homeschool program or whatever. Do what's best for your child and do the research and reach out for that help. So I would say that. I would say the other bit of information I would leave is, do what is best for you. Mental health is really important nowadays. There's a lot of black men that's out here that's wearing so many different hats to appease so many different people that at the end of the day, they have no idea who they are. So do what's best for you. Take care of yourself. Because if I'm not together, I'm no good for my kids or whatever the case may be. So I would say that. And I would say, find your purpose.
That's right.
Find your purpose. Whatever your purpose is, find that purpose. When I was younger, my purpose was to make sure that my 2 kids were successful or were doing very well. So my son is a flight instructor. He's a pilot. And my daughter has worked on Capitol Hill, and she's worked for the mayor. And now she's a first-time mother with my wonderful granddaughter.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So, you know, that was my driving force. That was That was my purpose.
Yes.
Find that purpose that's going to get you out of the bed and make you a productive human being in society. So I would say those 3 things are really important.
I hope everyone took these notes down, these nuggets, started writing down. I told them in the beginning, didn't I?
Yes, you
I said,
did.
when Emmett speaks, they need to start capturing everything that he says.
Wow.
Right?
Thank
Because if you have a kid in today's system, there's ways for you to improve that knowledge that they're receiving.
It really is.
And you gave people so many good items today, so many
Thank
things
you.
for them to be able to look back on from this show.
Right, and being the support system that parents need, because sometimes they feel as if they have no options. You know, they have this child and I don't know what to do. They want me to medicate my child, or they say he can't learn. I just remember my child being in the 2nd grade, and again, he was in a private setting, and he was a little African-American boy, and most of the kids did not look like him. And so when he went into the classroom, they said they target him and put a label on him as he could not learn, and he was only in the 2nd grade. And these kids are way advanced than he is, and there's no way he is going to learn. And I don't even see that he has the drive in him to learn, and he was in the 2nd grade. And I would say, parents, you be your child's biggest advocate. And I said, my son can learn, and my son will learn. And I took it upon myself to homeschool my child to prepare him for that classroom. And when he left that classroom, he left with honors.
There you go.
So never allow people to put labels on your child.
You go.
Never allow it.
You really can do that. And like I said, I'm really proud of the success that we've had with our program. So we're looking to grow and expand the program. I think we've laid a pretty good foundation. So if anybody's interested, they can email me at clararuthhomeschools@gmail.com if they have any questions, interested in enrollment, if you're in that Baltimore metropolitan area, or even if you're in Virginia or wherever the case may be, there is a virtual section that we could set up for them as well. So yeah, we're looking to grow, and I'm looking forward to really expanding my program and getting it really going in August. So yeah, I'm excited.
And we appreciate the print that you're leaving in our world. So as you shine brilliance, the print that you're leaving in our world, where parents can advocate for their children, and they have more options for their children. And not only that, those kids, where you planting those seeds and watering those seeds, and they're becoming brilliant kids, because if it wasn't for a program like yours, then where would they go? We would lose them in the system. And we don't want to lose our children in the system. So we applaud you for what you're doing.
Exactly. Well, thank you. I really, really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to expanding those seeds and really reaching out and making positive impacts in the community. Really am.
And so if your father was here today, what would he say to you?
Wow, wow.
Oh, boy.
Ooh.
Boy.
That's a good one.
Let me see. He would probably say, why you wearing my belt? No, I'm just kidding. Why you wearing my clothes? No, he would probably say, I'm proud of you. My father used to do these platforms all the time. So he would say, I'm proud of you getting to the point in your life where you can do these platforms the way I used to do these platforms. So I'm proud of the steps that you're taking in my footsteps in order to elevate yourself. So then I think he would say that. I definitely think he would say that.
Yes, and he will be proud, and we're proud as well to have you on the Brilliant Black Man Show.
Right.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for your just being a community person. I call it a servant leader. Thank you for being a servant leader and leading well.
Thank you.
This is the Brilliant Black Man Show. Your host, Melissa Johnson, co-host
Brian Bailey.
Continue to follow the show as we shine brilliance all around the world.
It's the Brilliant Black Man Show.
Thank you for watching the Brilliant Black Man Show, where we shine brilliance all around the world. Follow the Brilliant Black Man Show at brilliantblackmanshow.com. You can also follow and like us on Facebook, YouTube, and all social media outlets at Brilliant Black Man Show.